And welcome everybody to I guess this would officially be our 31st annual summit, but have been transforming things at Witty, and we'll have different types of programs that we'll be announcing. Do a lot virtually, physically, many things going on. Very excited for our first session that'll be led by Brad Rochefort and Brooks Wood, all around agentic AI. How do we set up agents? Things to that effect. So I'm not going to talk anymore because I don't want to miss any of the things you all are doing. Brad, Brooks, over to you.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Hey, Brooks, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Brad.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about agentic AI. I think it's one of those words we kind of get, but then it helps to talk about what the word means, where I can go to use it, what I can do with it, how people are using it. Brooks, who's going first, you or me?
You go first, and then I'll pull up what I have second.
Wonderful. Okay, so I made a slide. Of course, I used AI because I'm a big believer in using the tools. For anyone who knows me, I will very often say, did you try using the AI tools? So I made this in Claude today, and we're talking about agentic AI. This is an overview because I know Brooks has a more technical grasp, which is great. It's always good to have the two-hander of the different styles of knowledge. So let's look at a broad strokes scope of agentic AI. Um, Here's the idea that some 50% of companies have tried something with AI agents and that they're wanting to double their return on investment. And that's what's expected. It's good to have a benchmark. Like, am I going to get 10,000 times my money? Don't expect that. Try to go like two times your money or three times your money. Earlier this year, I spoke at a conference for conversational AI. And what I learned from the other speakers is that successful teams start with a very small budget and they say, what if we took the money that we made on this first project and used it for the second project? It's much easier to get your organization to buy in on a small project where you say, let's take $10,000. And if I can save $10,000, I'm going to use that next money on a bigger project. So when it comes to return on your investment, don't think you have to go and spend millions of dollars to get agentic. Think that maybe I'm going to take a modest amount of money. I'm going to save some and maybe double it. And all of a sudden you're building and building and you can progress through this. This is very much a progression. You could expect, good results from small teams that are physically in the same room together, is what I learned. So if you're going to do things with agents, bring in the actual people to the physical room with a whiteboard that you think those team members will be using the agents and listen to them in the moment. That's the best thing I learned from that conference was gather the people physically around the same table, get a whiteboard and say, if I solved one problem for you with an agent, what would that one problem be? And then will that solution bring us a return on investment? If all of a sudden you didn't have this task or the task was automated, let's put a dollar amount to it and go, if we're going to spend $10,000 on this, the solution should be $20,000. And then say, okay, now I've got a plan in place. There's a projection that a third of enterprise software will be agentic within the next 2 or 3 years. So this is not something that's going to go away. You're going to say that like 1 in 3 of my tools might have some form of agent moving forward. And there's a belief that 80% of customer service issues could be solved autonomously. So for anyone that has customer service, anything, think that maybe 8 out of 10 problems could get solved using Agentic. So those are the reasons to use Agentic. It might solve 8 out of 10 customer service problems. The reason that you should start to learn it is because 1 in 3 softwares might have it. The financial value is you might start to double your investment on it. And then the inclusion of it is it might be included in half of companies. So agentic is worth learning. What makes something agentic is that it has an awareness. It can perceive something, so it takes in different modes of information, which is text, video, and audio, and it brings them in from multiple sources. And so this AI software or this agent will bring in information in different ways. It will be able to reason with it. So the instructions that you give it, it can make decisions on it, and then it can take step-by-step action. The biggest thing you can think about an AI agent is step-by-step action. So an agent will take one step, and then another step, and then a subsequent step without having to ask you at every instance, what should I do in this? That's what makes it an agent. It's like having a real estate agent. They go out and they sit in the house and they sell the house. This is like an action agent that goes and sits in some parameter, and then anything that comes through the door, it interacts with. It follows a set of steps and it executes them. But it's important to see this is very early days. Brooks, would you call this the very beginning of agentic AI? Would you say that we're starting the history? Have we even started agentic history?
I don't know. I think we're right at that beginning, starting sort of here, but not many people know exactly what it is. And I think agents are just kind of one of those words that's sort of a catch-all at the moment. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people might have a difference of opinion of what an agent is versus what it actually is.
Yeah, so an agent should be able to be aware of the information you give it, make some reasonable steps one by one. It should be able to do some kind of action and integrate with tools because the speed of AI software has greatly increased over the last 2 or 3 years. Even if it's not possible today, it's still worth brainstorming and saying, what if these two tools could talk? And what if when something happened in one box, the other box knew about it? You don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to be a computer science expert. You have to be creative and say, I can imagine a case where information went from one place to the other. As Brooks said, we're almost in the prehistory of AI. So imagine it's going to get better. And if you're prepared for it, if you say, as soon as these two boxes could talk, I could save my company $10,000 and it would only cost $5,000 to implement, suddenly that's a business action. That's very worth doing. Um, APIs is like the bridge between them. It's an application platform interface, which is to say it's two different boxes and the bridge between them. Database is the collection of information, and systems integrations is the action of connecting different lists of information, emails, numbers, inputs, chats, right? And these agents are going to integrate with a language model and with actions and with output, bridges between software, databases, and then the way we integrate systems. And the idea of the future of agents is that they will adapt and refine through feedback loop, which is to say, if 10,000 people come to your website and they all chat and say, I'd like to know about your product. You sell light bulbs. Can the light bulbs work in Australia? Can they work in China? Can they work in cold temperature? Can they work in hot? The idea is that the agent might say, you know what, we're always getting comments about these things. I don't know that every agentic system has that, but this is something you can expect from it. Some might have it, but you can expect more and more of your agents to learn from the thousands or hundreds of instances or the tens of thousands. A broad strokes look at the real world applications could be across these 6 sectors. In a clinical summary for healthcare, it might be in patient intake. I know, Brooks, you and I both work with Dr. Harvey Castro, and Dr. Harvey Castro, MD, works in healthcare and technology, and he's been showing doctors and hospitals the way that you can use your time wisely as a doctor to deal with patients and not deal with paperwork. And an agent might be able to get information from people. It might be able to sign them up, ask them initial questions. So I wouldn't say that it's going to handle the complex parts of it, but it might handle the the time consuming parts of it. Agentic AI can optimize clerical work and admin work in healthcare, in finance, certainly in customer service. There's a lot of function in customer service. Think about an agent knowing when someone comes to your site and engages with your pop-up chat. You're on a website, you sell light bulbs. I don't know why, but you sell light bulbs. It's just an idea. And then someone says, hey, you know what? Can you sell 3 packs of light bulbs? Imagine the chat says, hold on a second. Are you a frequent customer? Are you part of our mailing list? And it starts to take steps. It says, do you have a problem with this? Can I solve this problem for you? Resolving customer service problems is one of the primary instances for agents. But there's also not just retail customers. There's like larger customers across business to business. You can get very creative with this. Use agents to process payments, to personalize customer interactions. Manufacturing is its own world. I think if you're a manufacturing specialist, you know the areas that you need to work with, but you could be in scheduling, predictive maintenance, quality control, and optimizing your supply chain. The agent is not going to perform an entire task of one singular worker, but what it will do is parts and pieces of that. It might aggregate data, it might generate lists for you. Software development is its own imagination space. If you can imagine something in software development with Replit, with Cursor, with Windsurfer, with all the different language models that do coding, I think agents are leading the way in software development. And then with business operations, which perhaps is many of you, start to imagine generating leads using agents. Start to imagine that you're going to take any place where people come through your system, and maybe you can use an agent to interact with the way you decide who to reach out to, how to qualify them, how to market to people, how to report on your finances, and how to automate your workflows. And finally, before I hand it over to Brooks, we're going to do a reality check and an action plan. The reality check is that you might get like a 5 or 6% boost in customer satisfaction, right? There should be a boost, but don't imagine that it's going to solve all the problems. One of the big things I hear from people is that the uninformed coworker thinks it's going to magically be a perfect world, and then they're disappointed, and then they chalk up agentic AI to their lack of knowledge. So don't promise people it's going to be this gigantic increase in customer satisfaction, but it should be modest. The point is, it's a business action. Um, Imagine that you're going to be at least twice as fast in completing tasks. Um, Imagine you're in the $2 to $3 for every $1 investment. Just ballpark that in your mind. Say this is not a casino where I'm going to bet $1 and win 100. That I'm maybe going to bet $1 and win 3 or 2. So it's ballpark a lower ROI, but nonetheless, these are business actions that will bring money. There's the opportunity to automate, you know, 1 of every 8 hours or 1 of every 7 hours in the next couple of years. So this is valuable to learn. And you can reduce your operational costs, but be aware that it's expected that like 40% of the projects you're going to do this year might get canceled. So this is not like a long-term solution. Don't imagine that your entire organization for the next 10 years is going to use the same agent. These things are going to change. If you're starting to create a project that's going to scale across your entire organization, and you're doing it yourself, not as a technical professional, imagine that 3 of the 4 of them are going to fail. Okay. There's a lot of integration requirements. There's a lot of concerns of governance and security, and there's a lot of gaps of whether or not your infrastructure is ready. And that's where people like Brooks, who created a course on this, can help guide you through, either hiring a technical professional or doing it in-house. So my last comment here before I hand it over is that your action plan can be a pilot project. As I said at the start, a low risk, high value process. So sit in a room with people, write down on a whiteboard, if this worked, how much money would we make? How much would it cost? And then have a low risk, high yield pilot project. And then invest in the capability to integrate your infrastructure. So invest in the software that stands to be connected to the most softwares. Governance, I can't say this enough, is have a team on your staff, whether that's 2 people or 3 people or 4 people. Have a group of people who develop the rules. The ladder for artificial intelligence software inside a company is to learn the words as a team, and then learn the rules, and then go to the tools. So right now we're talking about the words. What do these words mean? Having governance means learning the rules. What does management need? What does human resources need? What does legal need? What are the rules for using this? Anything with a dollar sign never goes into the language model. Anything with a sensitive document never goes into the language model. When you know the rules, have a small committee that's a governance committee, develop them, and then make a framework that complies with legal for your geographic area, legal for your business area, and legal for your sector. And then scale smart, which is to say focus on measurable business outcomes. I think that's really important to emphasize, is that you should be able to very clearly say, if I made a 7% gain in this, it would be worth the time and money, instead of magical thinking like, oh, it might just explode and be better. It's very important to quantify that into a specific number and say, let's at least aim for this. And even if it fails, a third of business software is going to be using agentic. Half of companies are going to be using agentic. 80% of customer service might be agentic. This is a coming wave of automation that I'm excited about. Brooks, I'm going to hand it over to you. I know you've got some slides prepared too. Oh, Brooks, you're
Sorry. From my perspective, just because you can add something to an agent, right, doesn't necessarily mean that you need to, right? If you can automate a workflow in your day-to-day life or your business, or really anything that you're doing, if that's something, there's a clear decision that needs to be made and a clear pathway and a process to follow. It doesn't necessarily need to have AI agent added to it. Really, when you start to come with some more ambiguous tasks or things that might need more of a human level thought or writing ability to it, that's when you want to start adding in the agentic AI side of the workflows. And we'll go through what that looks like in just a second. So what I wanted to go through really quick were just a couple of agents that you could use from a workplace perspective. Google Gemini, they have a bunch of really amazing tools and tooling and things that you can add. So if you're leveraging Google Workspaces in your business, there's a bunch of things that just allow things to be connected through all of their platform of services. There's another one, a newer one called SoundHound through Amelia. And this Amelia bot, it does a bunch of really amazing things. And we'll talk through that in a second. IBM has Watson X. And then Microsoft has Copilot. I'll talk about that one next. And then before that, we'll jump over to Claude. So Anthropic that owns Claude, they built out this thing called MCP. And if you look at what a browser is, a browser uses a little protocol called HTTP. And MCP, you can look at that. It's sort of like the new browser for AI. And that allows you to take these AI agents and connect them to disparate systems very easily without a lot of technical knowledge or requirements that go with it. So really what ends up happening is you look at your Claude chat or your ChatGPT chat as sort of like your new browser, and then you can add these MCP plugins to it to do different tasks. One might be browse a web page and come up with the top 10 items that you're looking for on YouTube. Another one might be sending an email. So let me.
Brooks, right now we're seeing your computer with code, not with your
Oh,
presentation.
why is that doing? Let me switch to that. Sorry.
Yeah, good. Thanks for catching that, everyone in the chat.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Here it is. Sorry about that. So, this is how an MCP server sort of works. You have your chat app, and then you can connect it to all these different plugins and different things downstream to that. So let me jump back over to this presentation. So when we talk about, I would say that the one that has the most legs right now or has the most connections to it would be through Microsoft Copilot. Like 80% of the Fortune 500, or 85% actually, are on Microsoft and Microsoft Copilot as sort of like an add-on. And so building in those platforms allows you to connect to all of your services. So imagine a salesperson needs to understand what's happening on with an account that they're prospecting for. They could do all their research through Copilot, then they can start sending emails through Copilot, leveraging these tools. And one of the tools that's built into this through the Microsoft Copilot agents and stack is the MCP plugins. So let me just show you what these look like. So there's another tool called N8N, and that's an open source tool that's sort of a low code tool that lets you drag little elements onto the canvas here and then connect them together. What I have here is it's checking my inbox. So what it's doing, it's looking through my inbox. And if I have emails coming from specific people, it's going to pull those off to the side. And if it's a new contact or someone that I've never talked to before, it will respond with a welcome notice. Like, thanks for emailing me. What can I help you with? And it goes through all these different steps here. And sometimes these steps involve leveraging an AI to get some writing. Sometimes these steps are just sending the email, for instance. And when I talk about making sure that you have your workflow and your process figured out, this is what I'm talking about: a workflow of what's step A, step B, step C, and then is it necessary to add AI to it? Because sometimes it's not necessary, and that wouldn't necessarily be an AI agent. That would just be sort of a workflow, or if you want to call it an agent without AI, you could do that as well. I have another one. This is a chatbot. So we put this on your website, and then it can talk back and forth to you based on knowledge that you've given it of your website or your company or whatever product it is that you're selling, or information that you want to convey downstream to others.
And Brooks, you teach people how to do this, right?
Yes, and we have a course. So we have a podcast called the AI Catch Up, and there's a courses section, and we have an MCP course that goes through this and a bunch of other courses too. How to use ChatGPT, how to use Napkin AI. There's a bunch of them in here. And one of them goes through N8N and how to set things like this up. And so when you go through these things, it's really important to want to understand what the possibilities are, but really just kind of think big about it. What are tasks that I've had before that are arduous or repetitive that I can now offload to an AI? And one is just checking email and understanding what's the most important thing you need to respond to for the day. Or another one is having a chat bot on your website or another place where you would have communication. You could also have it through just text messaging as well. But and then the last thing I just wanted to talk through is with what Claude has. So if you want to dip your toes into these agent sort of things, and my recommendation would be to leverage Claude because they invented this MCP protocol, and they have a bunch of really neat plugins that you can add onto this, and a bunch of things that you can really do to start building these things out. So that was really what I have for the presentation at the moment. And Brad, so what do you think, like, if you were to automate one task with an agent, what do you think that would be?
What a good question. I think it would be news sources for today. I think that it's a very conceptually easy task to say, I read these papers, I read these blogs, I read these Substacks, I read these mediums, I get emails on these accounts. I did make, because they're free, a Google account as newsletters about one certain topic, which is AI software. So that when I go to that email account, everything in that is only about AI software. So when I check it, it's very focused. I can imagine automating an agent to go there and then summarize a variety of specific sources and those emails, but getting your like personalized newspaper that's up to the minute. Whether that's about who's either emailing you for business or for personal or for information. Um, I think being able to be prepared on any topic in advance of any meeting with a single click would be something to automate. Without getting specifically into what I do, news automation, I think is a no-brainer. What about
Yeah,
you,
that makes a
Brooks?
ton of sense. Yeah, that
What
makes a ton
about
of
you?
sense. The thing that I'm really enjoying lately, it's sort of an agent that's built into Zoom, the AI companion. If I drop into a meeting late, in the AI companions in there, I can just ask it to catch me up, or I can say things like, "Was my name mentioned?" And it would give me a good synopsis. And then what I've been doing on the back end of, so you go to any meeting these days, and there might be like 5 or 6 AI note takers. So with that workflow I just showed you with email, I have a rule set. So anytime I get an email from one of the note takers, it summarizes all of those together and gives me just one big main sort of draft of what occurred in the meeting, so that I can move on from it without having to go through 6 or 7 different, sometimes 8 different meeting note takers that are there from everybody when you're in.
Hmm. Yeah. What about you, David? Are you automating anything, or do you have a wish list, that item that you said, you know what, Witty could really use? What's automation look like for you, David?
Well, yeah, and I have a lot of questions from that too. But automation, the email thing, Brooks, that you showed that workflow's exciting. We do use Zapier still for some of
Mhm.
what we do, just when somebody registers and then they get the auto calendar invite and just automating some of that workflow. But now we're working on just replacing it with N8N. It'll probably be like 10% of the cost or 20% of the cost. I think some of those tips are great. Yeah, email's probably the number one. But I would like, Brooks, that's a great idea that you do with kind of the greatest hits from all the read AIs and all the other things that you get, because I get many of those too. I have just been depending on my read AIs usually at the meetings. I just take that and use it. Have you found that one's better than the other, or have you asked your AI to evaluate which one's best, or does it just depend on the meeting, what they capture?
It depends on the meeting and what they capture. So like there's one of them, I forget exactly which one it's called. There's one of them that will do like video clips and pull video clips out depending on the topic. And I found that one's been really interesting. What I really do enjoy though, the summaries that the AI companion through Zoom is doing. I think so far from what I've seen, that one provides the most actionable items and the best transcription that I've seen. And it's just built into Zoom if you have a pro subscription.
Right. Yes. And we have a question, Craig. And come to the AI think tanks, everybody, because this is where we just have everybody get up to speed.
Yeah, I was gonna I was gonna ask uh, Brooks about the AI compilation and the connection between them. How do you work the interactions between others other people's AI note takers? I'm curious about the security on that, or how you actually allow it.
So what I do is most of the note takers, if you were in like a Zoom, for instance, and like if I'm logged in with Zoom, it will know what my email address is, or if based on the invite, it will look at all of the attendees. And what I'll see oftentimes is that when you finish with the meeting, each note taker will send you its own summary of the meeting because you attended.
Oh,
So I'm
okay, so
taking
yeah.
those actual email summaries and combining them together and coming up with like an averaged weighted scenario of what were the action items, what was missed, expand on this here, or maybe Otter has a different opinion of something versus like Fireflies, for instance.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like a auto opt-in type thing. I mean, if you attended the meeting, then you've automatically opted in to receive the emails and connect to their AI reader. Interesting.
Yeah, and then I have a rule in my inbox that anytime it gets one of these summaries from Fireflies or Otter or from Zoom, it will automatically send it over to that N8N workflow that I just showed to do all the summaries and collate it all together.
Hi, nice, nice. I wasn't aware that it would automatically do it. That's great. Thanks.
Great. Excellent. Well, why don't we do this? Would it be good maybe to break everybody into small groups and introduce each other, introduce yourselves to each other, maybe just give everybody a chance to speak about how they would use some of these tools now, and then we'll come back and we'll share, and then we'll get to Renard, our next speaker at the top of the hour. Amazing, Brooks and Brad. We'll do some Q&A when we get back. We'll be back in 8. If anybody's having difficulty getting into their room, just let me know. And for those watching on YouTube, thank you for being here. For this session, we'll be